And welcome to the presentation that I'm going to give today on gamification and workforce management. My name is Jeremy Finney. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Sability, and I'm coming at this presentation from the point of view of a WFM professional who is also an avid gamer. I've been doing workforce management implementations and strategy consulting for the last 9 years, and I've been gaming since I was 5 years old. I'm one of the generation who has had access to video games, and it's been a part of my life since I was a young child. And I've always noticed, even into my working life, that they are extremely motivating. There's lots going on in these games that mirrors real-life experiences and the real-life challenges that face us all in the workforce. I had a conversation with a boss of mine about 7 or 8 years ago on just how much better it would be if the information that I had to deal with in an everyday way, on an everyday basis, was presented in a way that was a little bit more similar to the way that video games do it. So I think there are lots of games, lots of lessons that we can learn from the way that games structure activities, the way that they motivate us, and the way that they're organized. So I started doing some research on this topic earlier this year in the spring, and as I read more books and watched more presentations and listened to experts speak on the topic, I got really excited about it. And I hope that comes across today. I am definitely more of a workforce management guy than a gamification guy, but hopefully through the research that I've done, I'll be able to share some of the things that I've learned and make it useful to you. Show you what gamification is, where it fits, what potential it has in the field of workforce management, and then also more broadly. So what is gamification? Well, the short answer is it's a way of making ordinary activities more engaging based on lessons learned from games. For example, a conference call. I often work from home, and when I do work from home, I'm often on the phone taking these conference calls. As anybody who's spent a lot of time on conference calls knows, it's easy to let your mind wander. It's easy to lose sight of what's happening in the call, maybe start checking your email and getting involved in an instant messenger conversation or trying to get some work done. And inevitably, when your name gets called, you have to ask them to repeat the last 10 things that they said so that you can give an answer. That's not ideal. The way that I fight this is I pace around. I am a pacer. I pace around my apartment. This isn't actually my apartment, but it's we'll pretend that it is. But even pacing around is not really enough to keep my mind active. So what I do is I imagine out of the corner of every piece of furniture in the room a little dotted line, like a laser in Mission Impossible, that is coming out of it and stops when it hits a wall. And my job is to walk around this room. I'm still pacing anyway, but now I'm not supposed to step on any of the red lines. It's a silly game. There's nothing to it, and it's just enough activity for my mind to keep me on my toes, to keep my mind going. And it's a great example. It's kind of like the crack in the sidewalk game. You're walking to school. Walking to school is boring. You imagine that every time you step on a crack in the sidewalk, you break your mother's back. And sometimes you step on the cracks in the sidewalk on purpose, just because you're having, you like the mischief feeling of breaking your mother's back. You're adding a bit of a narrative to the story along the way. You're giving meaning to the things that are happening as you go, and that helps keep it all interesting. Here's another classic motivation problem. This is a picture from a reality TV show called The Biggest Loser, where contestants are challenged to lose as much weight as possible during the course of the show. Take a look at the look on that woman's face in the pink shirt. She is not enjoying this experience at all. She's not looking forward to getting on that treadmill. She's not buying into what the presenter is talking about. This is how most people feel when they have to get on a treadmill. One of the mainstays of most modern treadmills is a console sort of like this one. It shows you your progress. It shows you how long you've been running, how many calories you've burned, how fast you're running, what the level of difficulty is, all kinds of information, your heart rate. But sometimes this is actually demotivating. Just providing a bunch of status information can sometimes serve to highlight how far you are from your goals. To lose a pound, you need to burn 3,500 calories. Geez, you think to yourself, I'd have to go a whole hour just to burn 1,000 calories, and that's an awful long time. I'd be more inclined to get off this thing after 8 minutes. So tracking progress alone isn't enough to make something interesting. Other treadmills take this approach, where they actually have an LCD picture of a road on here, and it's simulating the experience of running down a country road with a nice cloudy blue sky. At least it's a little bit distracting. I could imagine putting a baseball game on there or something else to trick your mind into thinking that you're doing something more useful and more fun than you're doing. And you'll see that in most gyms. They'll have TVs up front. You'll have iPods on people's heads, anything to take your mind off the drudgery of being on a treadmill. But the fact remains that it's still a treadmill, and people still avoid it at all cost. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is an engaging way of running. These people are running even harder than they would on a treadmill, and they have to do it for 90 minutes to finish a game. Look at the concentration and the determination and the engagement on their faces. They are really into this. Ultimately, though, they're still accomplishing the goal of physical fitness. You get feedback all the time. You get the ability to score goals and to prevent people from scoring goals. You're part of a team. You've got a compelling storyline behind it. You know, you've got goals that are shared by everybody. You have the ability to be recognized for your accomplishments. That's what gamification is all about. You're still ultimately doing the same thing, physical fitness, but you're trying to make your workplace a little bit more like a game of soccer and a little bit less like a treadmill. So according to Bunchball, who is one of the major gamification vendors out there, gamification is the integration of game dynamics into your site, service, or community. Game dynamics. Game dynamics are what are created when you add a human element to a game. A game is composed of what you can call game elements. Game elements are things like leaderboards and points and badges and accomplishments and trophies and things like that, kind of all the little things that go into making a game. Once you add the human element, you get game dynamics. This is behaviors within the game. This is the way that people behave when you put some rules around them, when you give them some game elements, and you see what they actually do in the game. Here's a great example of a gamified application. This is Yahoo Answers. If you've ever typed in a question to Google and hit search, odds are Yahoo Answers is going to be one of the better sources you'll get coming back. Yahoo Answers is a website that allows experts and the user community to answer questions and then thumbs up or thumbs down the answers that everybody is given. Over time, this results in the best answers rising to the top. And I can vouch for this. Yahoo Answers usually gives me pretty good answers. And you can see here, somebody has asked about bats being blind and how do they know when it's nighttime, and just a bunch of questions about bats. So this lady has written a thoughtful response and actually referenced a source on her topic. So this is net result is free access to expertise, and it's a great way of motivating people to give answers. The system couldn't work though without some rules and some points and some things to keep track of what's going on. So here we've got some points. Nothing here is worth any money, but they're trying to reward people for encouraged behaviors and disincent people from overusing the system in a way that drains it. So every time you ask a question, you're kind of creating a bit of a burden on the system. Every time you answer a question or have your question, your answer selected as the best one, you're adding to the system. So they've sort of tried to create an incentive system here that keeps people moving in the right direction. Here we've got levels. This is another part of the incentive system where people are moving up through levels based on the number of questions they've answered, the number of points that they've accumulated. And over time, they're given the ability to use the site more and more. They're given more and more power. And overall, they're gaining more and more reputation. Yahoo gives out thank yous for contributing as well. So it all depends on what motivates the individual, what reasons they might have for doing this. Here we've got some more game elements on display. Kalamasita is the lady who answered the question from the first page. And you can see here the concept of reputation. So she's, 59% of the time when she answers a question, it's the best one. She's answered 3,554 questions over the course of 5 years. So she really is into this. The question is then, why? And it's not the points, it's not the levels, and it's not the avatars. Here we have Progress Wars. This is a classic example. It's actually a satirical game website where you go, you do nothing except press that button, perform mission, and that progress bar fills up with a beautiful animation from left to right, and your levels go up on the top right, and you cycle through ridiculous missions that are meant to just illustrate that just by adding levels and accomplishments and achievements and trophies and avatars to your application, you are not applying gamification in the right way, and you are not going to motivate people. Nick Stein from Ripple sums this up nicely. There's a huge misconception that you can just tack game elements like badges onto something to make it more fun, and you are going to get the results that you want. People will be more engaged. You'll get that discretionary output. It's very hard to design games that engage people and that work. People aren't stupid. They don't like being they don't like feeling like they're inside a game that you've designed and that you're trying to get them to play. So what's motivating Kalamazita to answer all those questions? Well, here's a hint. She's a biologist from Argentina. A closer look at her profile, she's a biologist, and she's answering questions from the public about bats. That sounds to me like the sort of thing that a biologist might choose to do anyway. Many of them do. So she's not in it for the points. She's in it for her own reasons, professional interest, a desire to educate. The points and the levels and all the rest of these game elements are just trappings to help her be recognized for the things that she's doing and to to help motivate her. But you're trying to motivate her to do things that she was already motivated to do. Gamification feels meaningless. It feels pointless if it isn't supported by real-world meaning. People are already motivated to do many things in many ways for many reasons. In the workplace, meaning boils down to things like job title, salary, power, recognition, feeling valued, all the classic elements of engagement that you might have read about already. There are two main kinds of motivation. One is the one that everyone thinks of right away, and it's the one that people tend to want to apply gamification to first, whether they should or not. It's motivation through extrinsic factors, so external factors. Salary, bonuses, promotion, compensation in general. And then there's the stick side of it. There's the deadlines and the consequences. It's the whole carrot and stick mentality, and it is not a very effective way of motivating people. There's a few reasons why. If you try to incent people to play your game by tying real-world financial rewards to accomplishments within the game, you are sending a message that the game isn't worth playing in the absence of those incentives. It devalues the activity. Another problem is that it feels controlling. Once you've given people kind of a carrot and stick thing, whenever they comply, whenever they do the things that you're trying to incent them to do, they feel like the only reason they're doing it is because you manipulated them into doing it. So extrinsic motivation in the context of a game is quite demotivating. And finally, it misses the point. What we're trying to do here is not kind of pop behavioralism where we treat people like rats in a maze that we're trying to get them to go to the right places by putting little bits of sugar around. What we're trying to do is to recognize the things that people are doing already in the workforce, give them a way of tracking it, give them something that they can put on their resume at the end of the day, make them feel good about it, and make them feel like they're engaged, like they're enjoying what they're doing at work. Specifically, you shouldn't use gamification as part of your compensation or bonus plan. It is the classic example of extrinsic motivation, and it will you are not going to have much success with your gamification strategy if you go that way. Instead, use it for it has better uses. Use it for these things instead. Intrinsic motivation is what you should strive to achieve. People are already intrinsically motivated. Everyone has a desire to excel, and it varies person to person, but nobody wants to suck at their job. Everybody wants to feel like they're good at their job. It's just a fact of life. Everyone has a professional interest. Hopefully, they're employed in an industry that is somehow related to their professional interest. Most people are. So there is that just drives them to want to do it anyway. Psychological need for play. This is a big one. Dr. Stuart Brown of the National Institute for Play has spent a large part of his career studying what motivates people and the role that play plays in the human psyche. And he gave some great talks through TED, actually. One of them is, one of the things that he points out is that play is not really just a rehearsal for serious adult activities. Playing fireman as a kid doesn't lead to you being a fireman in adulthood. It's more related to a deep psychological need for play. It has a biological place, like sleep and dreams. He's got a great quote here that I'd like to share with you. I would encourage you all to engage, not in the work-play differential where you set aside time to play, but where your life becomes infused minute by minute, hour by hour, with body, object, social, fantasy, transformational kinds of play, and I think you'll have a better and more empowered life. So play it's in there. Everybody wants it to some degree in different ways, and if you can tap into that need for play, you're going to help motivate people in a very effective way. Another factor in intrinsic motivation is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is a fancy word for believing in yourself, believing that you have the capability to do it. One way that this can come about is by having done it successfully before. The problem with that is if you've done it successfully before, you may not be looking forward to doing it again, either because it was unpleasant or it's now easy and boring for you. Another way to achieve self-efficacy is to have somebody watch somebody else perform a task. If they can do it, so can I. You can help to allow intrinsic motivation to take over by providing autonomy and a free, safe place to play and create. And what I mean by autonomy, well, autonomy is at the core of what makes play fun. We experience as work what we are forced to do, and as play, what we have chosen to do voluntarily. Those are the words of Mark Twain. I'm going to borrow another example from Mark Twain, a Tom Sawyer example, where Tom has to paint a fence, and along the way, he sees his friends walking to go fishing. He really doesn't want to paint the fence, but he's trying to get his friends to paint the fence for him. He tells his friends that actually painting the fence is more fun than going fishing anyway, and gets them to pay him to paint the fence. It's a classic example of the role of autonomy in something feeling like play. The free, safe place to play and create, well, one of the things that really makes play feel like play is the ability to be creative, to be curious, and the pleasure of lighthearted mischief. I'm not talking about things that will be disruptive at work. I'm talking about things like giving people the freedom to choose a silly avatar if they want, or to play around with the tools that you've given them and to create something that is maybe a little flamboyant or a little bit outside the direct straight line progress of work. These little side trips are going to make the game more fun for your users, and they don't have to be a major distraction to work. It's all about controlling it and moderating it. All right, so another component of any game are goals and challenges. There isn't really a game if there aren't goals and challenges. You can have virtual worlds like Second Life that are nothing but a blank slate for you to go and participate in, but they aren't really games. They're virtual worlds. If you want to have a game, you need goals and challenges. Fortunately, this aligns games very closely with work, because at work we have things that we need to do. So it's all about reframing the things that people need to do at work as a series of manageable goals and challenges. One of the things that really helps is if you give people a choice of which goals and challenges to undertake. There's a bunch of reasons that will help. One of them is autonomy, which we spoke about already. If people choose the goal, if they choose the challenge, they feel more motivated to do it than if you told them you have to do this. You can control the goals and that people choose by making use of a number of game elements. You can make it more attractive for them to undertake goal A instead of goal B, or have a decreasing point value associated with a task that should get done soon. But ultimately, employees have to choose to do something, otherwise they're going to hate doing it, and you're not going to get that sense of intrinsic motivation and ultimately the engagement that you're looking for. At no point should employees ever feel like they don't know what's expected of them, like they kind of have empty page syndrome. They're sitting there, they're not sure. There's a million things I guess they could be doing, but they don't really know which ones to start with. So having well-defined starting points is always useful. To have a place where employees can always go to see a limited number of things that they could choose to do, hopefully some of which are engaging to them. And let's face it, if employees can't find goals or challenges that were at the workplace that are engaging to them, that they actually are qualified to do and want to do, then they might be they're a flight risk anyway. They might be working at the wrong place. Side goals and nested goals. Side goals are a great way of helping employees deal with goals that feel too challenging or that are taking too long or that have just got them stuck in a rut. If you can give little challenges, little things to do off on the side that might not take very long, but help get them moving again, give them a feeling that they're accomplishing things, you're going to help keep them in that state of flow, which we'll talk about later. Nested goals. You never want the goals to be so big that it'll take way too long to finish them, and you always want to be able to see that light at the end of the tunnel. Nested goals allow you to accomplish little things all along the way that are tracked and recorded, so that by the time you get to your big goal, you've had little bits of reinforcement all along the way to make it a little bit easier. Scaffolded challenges. As your workers accomplish goals and do work, they are going to become more competent at things, and it's going to take less and less time for them to accomplish things. You're going to want to also ramp up not only the number of things that they're expected to do, but also the difficulty. And so that's the concept of scaffolded challenges, and it's a hallmark of many games. To get from level 1 to 2 might take 1,000 experience points. To get from level 10 to 11 might take 100,000 experience points. The main difference being that when you're level 10, you're fighting dragons, and when you're level 1, you're fighting rabbits. So you're going to earn more experience points for everything that you do, but it's it's part of the mechanics of an effective game. Flow. This might not be a new term to most of you. In the HR space, flow has been discussed in a lot of popular books. One of them being Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. Another one that I've referenced heavily in this presentation is called Total Engagement, and I've got my references at the end. Flow is at the core of what motivates people. Our best moments, those we say we enjoy the most, occur when we're voluntarily trying to accomplish something difficult for which we have the right skills. Your sense of time is distorted when you're in this kind of space. The hours fly by. You get into it. You don't want, every time someone interrupts you from your task, you get irritated. You want nothing else but to do it. You might stay late. You might work overnight to get these things done. A state of flow is what people crave. It's the classic sign of engagement. The experience is an end in itself. Here's a visual representation of what it takes to create flow at the most basic level. You want to find the perfect balance of a person's abilities, their skills, and the challenges that you give them. If you give somebody who doesn't have the skills a challenge that is beyond their abilities, they're going to be anxious. On the other hand, if you keep asking a person who has a set of skills to do the same challenge over and over again, or challenges that are beneath their level of competence, then you're going to make them bored. And on either side, you've created an unhelpful, demotivating experience for the employee. What you're trying to do at all points is to make sure that the employee has access to goals and challenges that fall within that flow band. Obviously, as employees work more, the skills that they have should increase. They should increase in number, and they should increase in level. So you're getting better and better at doing the same things, and you're able to do more and different things. That means that the challenges that they need to have access to need to also be ramping up. It also means for your newer employees, you need to make sure that there are challenges and goals available to them that fit their lower level skills. Employees, given the opportunity, will tend to choose the skills and the goals and challenges that match their skill level to keep them in that flow band all on their own. They're trying to tell you already what their flow band is. This is what creates procrastination on some things and gets people to work hard on others. I know, for example, that in my own work life, there are some projects that I will more readily devote a lot of time to than others. This presentation being a perfect example. I really got into this presentation. I really enjoyed researching it and putting it together, and was willing to put huge amounts of time into it. On the other hand, I am notoriously bad at submitting timesheets. It is not something that motivates me. It involves me digging through a lot of emails and referring to a lot of notes and figuring out how many hours were spent on everything. And to me, that is something that falls well outside of in the boredom range. So people will choose things that are in their flow bands to do anyway. And the things that are in the flow band are not necessarily fun. Some of the things that are in there are difficult, maybe a bit of a pain, but if they are just within the reach, just within the abilities of one of your employees, they are going to find it rewarding to do. Engagement. This is the end game. This is what you want to accomplish. Flow will cause engagement. People who experience flow will keep coming back for more. It's like a drug. You want flow. When engagement happens, the goals of the employer and employee are aligned. And it's a very compelling experience. It's the feeling of all pistons firing, a bunch of engaged workers. Well, think back to the game of soccer. Those players are really loving what they're doing, even though it's difficult, and they stand the chance of getting hurt even playing a game of soccer. The engaging experience keeps them coming back. In the workplace, employee engagement, well, what are they looking for? They're looking for information, they're looking for feedback, they're looking for a sense of productivity, clarity of focus, a sense of play, learning. These are all the things that are associated with engagement. From the employer point of view, they're looking for adoption, employee advocacy, retention, reduced absenteeism, learning, productivity. If you've achieved engagement, you're going to have all those things in place. With engagement comes a feeling of mastery. So in this situation, you've just spent days playing the game of Halo as the Covenant, the bad guys, and you've finally defeated those pesky humans. Yeah! All this productivity leads employees to complete their challenges and goals, and they're increasing in difficulty over time. They've been learning all along, and now they're really, really good at their tasks. That's the sense of mastery. This is when you get into the territory of recognition and bragging rights and feeling valued, feeling good at your job. A sense of mastery brings with it a big rush of dopamine, biochemical reward signal. It's great for a person's pride, their reputation, and ultimately, yes, their resume. People experience mastery in different ways. One source is Gabe Zickerman. He's author of Gamification by Design, one of the leading books on gamification out there. And he claims that 80% of us value the social aspects of games above all else. So for that majority, the sorts of things that are really going to matter are the recognition, the bragging rights, the reputation, all the things that I've got listed here. Other people are motivated, the achievers are more motivated by their position on a leaderboard and the number of points they accumulated. Some people are explorers. They prefer to win by finding things that nobody else found. There's a place for all of them within a game, but the vast majority of people are motivated by all these social cues that come out of a sense of mastery. So, taking a step back from it all, we've taken a look at the employee motivation problem. Let's take a look a little bit more closely then at gamification in the context of workforce management. There are a lot of misconceptions out there about gamification. One of the big ones is that games have to be fun. How can work possibly be fun? How can you even think of work as being a game? Well, the fact is, economists have, for example, developed game theory to capture how human behavior works in strategic situations. Think the classic prisoner's dilemma. There are a lot of parallels between the activities that people take on in games, which are not necessarily fun in themselves. For example, organizing teams, analyzing statistics to see who's pulling their weight and who isn't, looking at people's long-term play histories to determine whether or not they should be on their team or not as part of recruitment. So games don't have to be inherently fun in the thrilling sense of the word. They just have to be engaging and create a sense of flow. Another one is that games are for kids. Well, right now, if you just look at computer games, which is probably where that misconception is coming from, because everybody knows that adults still do things like play soccer. Games are for kids. Video games are, let me see, what are the statistics here? The average age of a video game player today is 35 years old. 26% of players are over the age of 50. So everybody is showing that they can be motivated by games. There's a bit of a gender bias going on. Right now there's somewhere between 60 and 80% of video game players who are men. And that proportion is higher among the classic shoot-'em-ups like Call of Duty than it is among virtual worlds such as Second Life, which are less scripted and more social in nature. But everybody is showing some attraction to games and video games specifically. And the last misconception is the one that really dogs gamification. People think gamification, they think badges. They think all the stupid websites and loyalty programs and things that people have tried to get them to do through the use of meaningless badges. Adding game elements to work does not make it gamified. It does not make it engaging. So what is it about video games specifically that makes them highly engaging, so highly engaging that they can even be addictive? Well, here I've got a screenshot from World of Warcraft. This is one of the most popular games in the world and has been for an unbelievably long time. The overall impression you get from this is one of an immersive experience. You've got a headset on your head. You are talking to your teammates. In this case, there's 2 good guys taking on a whole bunch of bad guys. Often these parties are as big as 15 or 20 people. You've got a headset on. You've got a totally filled screen full of nothing but the task at hand. You've got an immersive 3D environment. You've got sound effects that are taking place. And look at all the feedback on this page. You've got some negative feedback. You're trying to do things that you can't do and things aren't working. You've got your ability is not ready yet. You're too far away. You're out of range. You've also got some purely informational feedback. You know, how many points of damage are being done. You've got numbers all over the place, all across the top, all across the bottom. You've got 2 different windows for text-based communication, a status window on the right and another one on the left where you have the ability to type and chat. You've just got, I mean, this has the potential to be information overload, but at the same time, over time, players learn to use all this information and they love having this information. There are a lot of third-party add-ins that actually allow you to have extra status bars on here that tell you about more things that might be useful to you, especially in a team context. There's a narrative at work here. There's a storyline. You know why you're trying to defeat that giant green bad guy. You know who you are in the context of the game. You have control over the narrative at a micro level, but at a macro level, the overall storyline doesn't change. A narrative is one of those things that can apply to work as well. Every company has a story, a long-term story, a story about the founder, a story about where they came from, the first products they made, why they've been so successful over the years, opening that second factory, whatever. Every company has a narrative that can be motivating in the right sense. And there's also the shorter-term narratives. You know, we've been through a rough couple of quarters, and we think it's because of competitor X and the great product that they've come out. We need to find out what the next great product is going to be, and we need to talk to the users. We need to figure out all kinds of things that will allow us to create the next big product and create the next cool thing. These narratives sound a little dry, but if you script them and integrate them into a game properly, they can be extremely motivating and part of what keeps people's eyes on the prize. Let's compare it to this. Here we have a rather unengaging screen from SAP. This is the sort of thing that people are more used to looking at work. There's no sense of play whatsoever in this screen. Actually, what you've got is kind of a confusing, high-stakes, stressful feeling. You're unsure what happens if you make a mistake, but you know that it's probably going to be a pain to deal with if you do. The information is all there, but the immersive experience is not. You, at any moment, could have an email come in and pop up in your way, a security warning. This is not an immersive experience. This feels like looking through a toilet paper tube at a very small part of a very large problem. There's no sense of team here either. In the World of Warcraft example over here, you've got status bars representing everybody on your team, and you've got real-time chat going on between you and them. Over here, which is no less, possibly more of a team experience than the other one, or a team environment, you don't have anything built into it. It is all kind of very separate, very to the point, very drab. So here's a list of what video games do well, and it amounts to everything. They do feedback, transparency, information, status, reputation, recruiting, everything that you could possibly imagine that goes into keeping people on task, telling them how they're doing, bringing them together, motivating them. Video games have got it all nailed. It's because they've been focused exclusively on those problems. In the business world, business applications tend to get built focusing exclusively on problems of productivity. How do we block out distractions? How do we How do we make sure that people are spending every minute of every day in the most productive way possible by staying on task, by giving them the tools that they need to be successful, but purely from the point of view of raw productivity. If you really want to get people to be productive, you've got to take a step back, realize that people are people who need to play, that they are motivated in ways that aren't as cut and dry as just putting them in front of a screen like that SAP screen and training them on how to use it. It boils down to well-combined game elements that fit a narrative. There's a great process behind this, and this is part of the reason that it works so well. All successful games follow an iterative design process. It starts with small prototypes on pieces of paper, people trying to play the games at the most basic levels before they're even close to finished. Gameplay testing is huge in creating a good game, and it just little tiny things about the balance of games, what is powerful and what is not, what spells are available to counter which weapons. If you get any of those things wrong, you're going to end up with much of a less rich game. Everybody's going to end up using the same items in the same way, and the same goes for a work environment. If you create a poorly crafted game, you are going to be incenting some behaviors in ways that you don't want to, and you're going to end up with tasks that aren't getting done. An effective game design process also requires that you know your users. When you're designing a game, you can take a look at the other games that you want to mimic, the other games that are out there that have the kinds of users that you think would enjoy your game, and you can see what motivates them about those other games, the things on the chat boards that they say they like and the things that they don't like. When it comes to the workplace, you also have a pretty good idea of what motivates your employees, but you should be asking. You need to find out before you design such a game. What sorts of things are your employees after? What are the sorts of things that they complain about around the water cooler? And effective game design really closely, as coming from the point of view of software development, I couldn't help but point this out or notice that the agile software development process looks a lot like the process for effective game design. And that may be because the people who are designing games are using agile and they're ultimately building software, but it doesn't take away from how true this is. It's a process that starts with really understanding what needs to be done to the best of your ability, but not getting bogged down there, putting it through a series of rapid prototypes, monitoring how it's being used, testing at every stage along the way to make sure that what you ultimately end up with is an engaging game. You can create unintended consequences with your game, and these can be both good and bad. One example of a positive unintended consequence comes again from the realm of World of Warcraft, from the book Total Engagement, where there's a virtual currency in World of Warcraft that allows players to buy items that would otherwise take them a long time to earn on their own by killing bad guys. Some players choose to earn this currency by providing their services as mercenaries to lesser parties. So if you've got a party of level 5 guys and you really want to kill such and such a dragon and you know you can't do it on your own, you can go onto this marketplace and you can recruit the services of this guy who will come in, join your party, allow you to succeed, take his money and go, and everybody gets what they want. So that is an unintended consequence that the designers of World of Warcraft did not anticipate. On the other hand, you can create negative unintended consequences, and that's what this slide is about. Backstabbing is obvious. If you create an incentive system that is meant to bring people together, sometimes all you can do is incent some of the people within that group to work against the overall group goal. Gaming a system is pretty common. Another kind of crude term that I decided to include here just because it's so common is point whoring, which is when people get so focused on the points and the elements in the game that you've encouraged behaviors that are really not what you wanted. So, for example, a social site called Tumblr introduced the concept of Tumblarity, which was its goal was to try to get more users using the site and making more posts. But what, in fact, they ended up doing by giving points away for making posts was encouraging people to put kind of spammy 1,000 posts a day on there with no real meaning or value, and you ended up totally ruining the site by creating an incentive system. This is why it's important to monitor the way that your game is being played and the effect that it's having. Cheating, messing with social meanings, that's a fun one. Messing with social meanings. So this comes from a game which was trying to encourage people to do social things to earn badges and rewards through the site. One of them would be to invite a coworker out for a coffee. When this lady did invite a coworker out for a coffee, the coworker asked why he'd been invited out, and it was explained to him that it was to earn this reward on a website. The guy really didn't appreciate this and said, "Do you have any idea how demeaning it is to be asked to go out, not because you like me, but because of some stupid game?" It's true. You need to think carefully about what behaviors you're incenting, and to make sure that when people are using it, that it's not in ways that are taking away from your system or causing awkward situations. One of the easiest ways to avoid unintended consequences is to avoid attaching extrinsic motivation to any of the in-game elements. Once people are extrinsically motivated, you've turned on a whole different part of their game. They're now going to game the system, do everything they can with a very narrow focus, a very narrow goal within the game. And then once they can no longer game the system, they won't want to play it anymore. You've got to make sure that you can always keep in mind the value of intrinsic motivation when you're creating these things. Here's one gray area that came to mind. In the workplace, if you're going to be tracking accomplishments, points, levels, relative status, reputations, all the things that people are doing in their work lives, what happens when it comes time for a performance review? Most companies still engage in performance reviews and bonus and incentive systems, and at some point you need to decide who's going to get promoted. So this creates an inherent conflict. Looking at my quote here, players trust reputations and are comfortable with transparency of information, in part because it's difficult to cheat. You can't advance merely because the leader likes you or owes you. You advance because you perform well, and in recognition for good play is communicated directly from your computer and not from other players. So that seems to imply that you should choose your leaders based on how well they're doing in the game. But on the other hand, that amounts to extrinsic motivation. So how are you going to deal with this? Well, my opinion on the matter is that games are accumulating information on personal competencies and experiences, kind of like a virtual resume. And you would be unwise to make promotion and compensation decisions without using this information. You might as well accept that it's going to be one of the sources that's consulted when you're deciding who to promote. Nobody would believe anything else anyway. All you can try to do is limit the feelings of unfairness and extrinsic motivation, and you can do this with the power of unexpected rewards, by not tying the achievements in the game too explicitly or too directly to compensation and promotion. Expect to be held accountable by your workforce if you decide to promote somebody who is performing very poorly in the game or is not participating in the game at all. You're going to make people angry and totally kill engagement. This doesn't mean to always promote the highest scoring player, but it does mean not to promote the lowest scoring player. You've got to strike a balance between respecting what's going on in the game and motivating people within the game in an extrinsic way. Finally, let's talk about a few of the vendors in the space. It's a fairly young space, so it's not all that crowded yet, and we've got different vendors who are taking totally different approaches to the problem. First things first, though, don't try this at home. Gamification is not the sort of thing that you can easily create, gamification for the workforce especially, because the problem of employee motivation is hard. It has the ability to incent people to do all kinds of things that you didn't anticipate, or more likely to just create a cynical reaction from everybody and you won't get engagement. So you really shouldn't, unless you're a software vendor thinking of getting into the business of WFM gamification, you probably shouldn't be trying to build this stuff yourself. So use the expertise of a vendor. The first one I want to talk about is Ripple. Ripple is a company that tries to facilitate goals, thanks, recognition, and microfeedback in a work environment. So they provide kind of a social media-like atmosphere where you can give thanks to people for great accomplishments. You can set up goals. You can create your own goals. Community can create goals for you, and they're very much focused on the issues of feedback and goals. Yammer is another one sort of in the space, but they've taken a different tack. So they are looking at it also from a social media perspective, but purely from a social media perspective. There we've got communities, groups, microblogging, document sharing. They're trying to be the Facebook that you would use at work. Since people seem to want to use Facebook at work anyway, well, let's give them one that is a little bit more work-focused, but try to keep some of the things that keep Facebook fun to use at work. The last one that I want to throw in here, just because it shows a totally different tack, is Proton Media. Proton Media offers a virtual workspace as an alternative to physical meetings. So if you're thinking of flying your management staff for a meeting somewhere, instead give them avatars in a virtual environment, give them a virtual office space that they can use where presentations and document sharing is all integrated. And this one's integrated with Microsoft Lync. So it's they're trying to be kind of an alternative to various teleconferencing, WebEx style, and face-to-face meetings. So all of these kind of take on different aspects of the gamification problem. None of them are creating the sort of the single all-encompassing work game thing that might be possible one day. I think that's coming. I'm not sure who's going to do it, but I do see in the future the possibility for some very engaging, kind of more immersive game-based workforce solutions. Time flies. Here we are. I'm at the end of my time. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. There's a ton of stuff that I didn't get a chance to cover in today's presentation, mostly where it pertains to ideas for the applications of game elements at work, things like virtual currencies and virtual marketplaces to allocate scarce resources and offer mercenary-like services, badges and trophies and how to use them, and avatars and proximity-based communications, the equivalent of water cooler talks and ad hoc work groups. There's lots else that could be talked about here. There just isn't time. So if you have more questions, I'd love to talk about this stuff. I find it I'm really enthusiastic. I find it really engaging. So if you have any questions for me, please get in contact with me by email. So thank you very much. I'd like to, just before we move on to question period, I just want to show you a few other things. This deck is going to be available for people to access afterwards, and I've got some bonus material in here that you can use to help evaluate vendor offerings that are out there. I'm a big mind map fan, and as I was reading through all my sources and watching the videos, I was creating a mind map of all the different things that contribute to intrinsic motivation, flow, engagement, and mastery. And I've kind of broken it out by the things that the employee wants, the things that the employer wants, the things that everybody wants. So when you're evaluating WFM offerings, and if you're looking, if they claim to promote flow, you can use this diagram as kind of a way to take a look at how many of the bases they have covered to kind of help you in your vendor selection and your decisions about whether or not to implement gamification in your workforce. And finally, I've got a bunch of sources on the last page if you'd like to see any of it for yourself. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions. Not sure how to do this. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really know how to open it up for questions. I'm hoping maybe one of the HR.com people can help me out here. Sue?
Hi, Jeremy. Okay, so I see one comment here, which was great presentation, and one question. Since 60 to 80% of gamers are males, did you run across any sex-based differences when applying gamification principles to the workplace?
Okay. Can everybody still hear me? I think so. Well, there was some treatment of that. One of the things that they pointed out is that since women seem to be more engaged statistically by the more social games as opposed to the more achievement-based ones, so things like leaderboards, that you need to really emphasize the building of a meaningful community within your game. Meaningful communities have got a lot of things that feed into them. Part of it is an avatar. a self-representation. When you create an avatar, you create a bunch of you create the ability to have a bunch of other motivating things built into your game. One of them, which I touched on earlier, was proximity-based communication. If my avatar is in the same room as your avatar, when I talk into my headset, you can hear me through your headset. And if you don't want to hear me anymore, either one of us can leave the room. So you kind of have the ability for ad hoc meetings. But aside from the practical things like that, having an avatar gives you something to personalize. It gives you a free space to play in. And it can be very engaging. People will sometimes spend a little too much time customizing the look and feel of their avatars. Once you've got these avatars and put it together with a reputation that you accumulate in a transparent way for your achievements at work, suddenly you've got a community that can give feedback to each other. You've got sort of playful competition that's taking place. You've got chat rooms and moderators and a lot of the things that can lead ultimately to an engaging and meaningful community. And so the literature that I've seen suggested focusing on a meaningful community as a way of engaging women in gamified applications.
So Jeremy, there's just one more comment, and I don't see any more questions. And the last comment is, excellent topic. Thanks for the great presentation.
Oh, well, thank you very much, everybody. I really enjoyed giving this presentation and preparing it. Please get in touch if you have, if you want to talk or if you have any questions.